Hello there. So today I'm joined by Donald Kelly, founder of the Sales Evangelist. He's helping B2B sellers increase pipeline and close more deals. Donald, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and I look forward to be able to bring some insights to your community.
Awesome. So before launching the Sales Evangelist, I know you had a diverse career in sales across different industries. Can you walk us through your career path before starting this company?
Yeah, so I started probably in college is where I really started understanding real sales. Before that, I did more of it was more of being a hustler, right? I grew up in Jamaica, and as a kid, I saw like my family and friends around me selling stuff in the community or whatnot, and I got this fascination for being a business owner because being an entrepreneur, but I didn't know as an entrepreneur, just call it a businessman. And then when I went to, early on, I was a kid at school selling candy, getting them wholesale and selling them, trying to make a little, extra little profit on it. I was creating little businesses with my friends, making some money during, the spring break and summertime, in the holidays. And then, so when I went to college, it was natural for me to do this. And one of my friends was like, "You should think of sales." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? What's sales? I just want to be a entrepreneur." And then he was like, "Listen, you should think about this." So I found a job, and I started doing. The first one was, I believe it was the Dish Network over the phone. So I'd reach out to people and try to sell them Dish Network. Then after that, I started doing timeshare presentation, like appointment setting, where we'd reach out to companies and try to and book appointments for the quote unquote sharks at timeshares to be able to go and meet with them and try to pitch them. And then after that, I went into IT training. So I started doing my real B2B stuff at this point, and I would sell I would sell IT services such as the classes like the MCSE, Net Plus, to governments, to individuals, mostly to individuals and government entities. In B2B companies. So I started getting into that world and it was exciting. And so technology was the place I took some time with. I did do door-to-door security sales, again, more in the tech space again, but it was more of a different approach. It was the D2D, door-to-door approach, and literally selling to homes. And that was, it gave me some experience. And then after that, I got into healthcare when I graduated, and sold to nursing homes, nursing facilities. We would sell them our mobile X-ray services, and then ultimately, finally, after that, I went into after that, I went into managed IT services and selling EHR. Was around that time of meaningful use in the U.S., where most of the medical facilities were required to have some kind of digital reporting for their healthcare, and then went into software sales. And I did that and found success because I really enjoyed tech, but started selling software and enjoyed that. And that's when I started doing a podcast based on the experience that I had. I started sharing things that was working for me and things that weren't working so well, and people gravitated towards it. And I started picking up coaching clients, and as a natural byproduct from the coaching clients, it led to the point where I couldn't keep doing moonlighting anymore as a software sales rep, and made a decision to jump and create the business. And that's when we started creating the sales consultancy and started to train and coach individuals. And then about a year or two after that, we started creating training programs and developing those, and those grew. And now we have this organization, and one of the ways that we did it was by using podcasts like means like this. So one of my clients asked, could we help him out? And I turned him down if I could do podcasts for him, and told him that we're a sales training company. But he came back and pushed. So we listened, and I had my production team help him out produce a podcast. And we started something on the side, another side business in like 2019, 2019 at that point. So this was 2015 when I left my full-time gig, 2012 when I started doing my podcast, and 2013 I started doing my podcast and consulting and coaching on the side. But then 2015 officially left my full-time gig, and then 2018, 19 I started doing my team started producing for this other company, and one thing led to another. So eventually, we created a podcast production agency. So now we had two organizations, and that podcast agency we just were rebranding and just went through that in December. So now it's Blue Mango Studios. So that's a little bit about our business and how that all started from being a sales rep and started sharing content and so forth. That was a long-winded answer there.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm looking for. So you have quite a vast experience. So naturally, it would be a long-winded answer. That's great. I want to dig a bit deeper into, because one thing that popped to mind right now. You've done a lot of different. You've sold a lot of different products, right?
Yeah.
How, and you mentioned, software, and you kind of grew closer to it. And how is selling software different than the other types of products and services that you've sold?
Yeah. So when I well, selling a software, it was mostly B2B. So that was really that was one of the big difference that I saw, and we also sold to governments as well. So it was a little bit different in the approach that we took. Door to door was you're selling to consumers. Dish network over the phone, consumers. So B2C. When I did timeshare, was business to B2C. But when I did sold IT training classes, it was a mixture. It was where we sold to the individual consumer, but we also sold to governments and also to B2B organizations. And the difference that I found was that the B2B, the selling software is definitely intangible. Most of the other services were in service based, and they were intangible products as well. But it's really harder to demonstrate the conceptually the software. When you think about IT training classes, you're getting a class. When you think about the timeshare, there's a timeshare that you can demonstrate the pictures of the house and so forth. But when it comes to the software side, it was this. We're trying to tell them their physical process that they have. There's a way of doing this digitally, and we could help with it and to make that happen. So it was hard to sell that intangible thing without demonstrating it, because the software we had was a document management software, not like copier services, but we literally had a software that created electronic filing cabinet similar to what you see with Google Drive today, and also like Box or Dropbox. So it was getting that in their heads that you're leaving from your physical file cabinet to digital file cabinet. And that was hard. It required painting pictures, so to speak, and being able to be so descriptive that they understood, and telling stories, and being able to show that we relate and understand their world right now as what they're working, how they perform in accounting department or student services department, where you have tons of documents. So that was probably one of the harder things, and the sales cycle was longer with B2B, selling to these larger entities versus selling to individuals. So those are some of the big differences that I saw.
Yeah. So and today, when you think about the sales evangelist, who is your ICP?
Yeah, so most of the people that we go for right now are in the sales evangelists are mid-sized organization and SMBs, and they are typically selling technology solutions or in the marketing space, and they have sales teams that they're building out. Or they have a small sales force, and they need training for those individual sellers, or they need consulting to build out their sales teams. The mid-sized companies typically have something in place already, and they're looking for help to help their team now get more deals top of funnel. So we help them with pipeline building activities. We help them with showing them how to utilize LinkedIn, and we show them how they can utilize how they can to convert via email and phone call. And we've seen as a natural attrition with our continuation is that once they start doing that and being successful, they usually want to find other means to attract new customers. And usually then that's where our Blue Mango Studios come in, where we can refer ourselves to them, and we can help them produce content and help them generate MQLs at the top, which therefore help fuel the sales process. as well.
Interesting. So, would you say that they are those businesses are focused on B2B sales as well?
Yes, majority
Yeah.
of our 99% of our clients are B2B sales, and it's just because of the nature of where we are in this space, right? That's who come to us, and that's the thing that we focus on the most. But we get individual sales reps that may be like we've had folks in life insurance and things of that nature that the principles can still apply, and they may go through our individual or cohorts rather than coming in with a company, but they might say I need help with coaching, so to work with one of our coaches to help them improve their sales game, or they might need help with, LinkedIn, so to individually join our LinkedIn prospecting program and so forth.
And I want to then dive deeper into different strategies on sort of how that you help them with in terms of sales. But first of all, I'm curious, what key lead gen strategies have contributed most to the growth of your business? Yeah.
Without fail, I don't even think about it. It's podcast, podcast. That's the means that we went about the first, because all of this stuff it happened by accident. It wasn't a deliberate plan to create a business. It was a plan to provide content and education to other sellers, people that were in the same situation that I was, that may have not gotten formal training and just wanted to get help. So I was like, I need to help out the Donalds that are out there. We were really thinking about like the rookie sales rep back then, and it just the title didn't quite fit where we were looking at. But the point though, it wasn't where the idea was to give just education to a community. So we just started doing it. But as a byproduct from giving that type of knowledge, the first person that reached out to me was Jose. And I know it, the OGs, right, from way back. I know it because it was somebody that went to my church. He saw that I posted this stuff that I'm launching a podcast about sales, and he was like, we need help. Can you help us? And I was like, no way. Not to him, but in my mind, I was thinking somebody wants my help from just sharing content. And the light bulb went on at that point. Like, holy moly, if I continue to share content, people will find it. They'll see my expertise and see that I can help them out. So Jose was the first one. Sorry to hit the mic there. Then Destiny. No, Katie was the second one. Then Destiny. Then Martin. Those are some of our early people that started reaching out to us. So that became we fueled it. So like right now I'm recording this week 1878, so 1878 episode, and we keep doing it because it's a means of attracting people to us. So that's our number one. And then number two, as far as lead gen is concerned, it then will be like some of the SEO stuff that we do, because we've built SEO authority over the years. Our the website has a little bit of juice on it. We'll get people who come through the website, and then naturally the third component, because I'm there, is LinkedIn, where we get people who will reach out on LinkedIn because of the content that we're sharing. So I err on the side, or camp out in the side of content marketing per se, content creation, because I've accidentally fell on it, and we saw and became, I would say, somewhat experts on that side of the house. Especially now we're doing it with other brands to help them create content that brings in leads and so forth.
Wow, that is kind of amazing. So, what I hear out of that is consistency. I mean,
Oh my goodness.
1,000 plus. I think
Almost
looking
2,000.
almost 2,000. That's amazing, Donald. I mean, looking at the whole podcast landscape that basically, since you've started, right, blew up into something most people didn't expect it to grow into.
Yeah.
But a lot of people who start podcasting, they give up pretty quickly, right? Like they don't get to that 100th episode. They don't get to that pivotal inflection point. Was there an inflection point for you? Was there a moment where you said, "Okay, this is picking up. This makes sense"?
So there's the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, right? Something like that I've heard. The second best time is today. And I was fortunate to be able to plant a tree, almost quote unquote, the podcast being that tree, over 10 years ago. So podcast was new, but I almost didn't do it because there were 7 other sales podcasts, and I was like, oh, there's a lot of people doing this already. What do I need? But what did I need me? Right now, I think there's close to over 300 sales podcasts in the space. But I was fortunate to start early on. So I was able to get that land grab, so to speak, and get market share. But what happened though, the time where I saw the that inflection point, I spoke at a podcast conference called Podcast Movement 2 years ago. And one of the things that I did in preparation was I looked at my timeline of when I started to see like things really popping off. Funny enough, though, I didn't see exponential growth at the beginning. I saw people. I saw enough that made me keep doing it because folks were reaching out to me. But I would probably say I entered a different stratosphere in 2019, and especially in 2020. The podcast literally, that's when I started reaching out to and working with big brands like LinkedIn, and started working with HubSpot, and started working with Salesforce, like literally 2019, 2020, when all of that happened. So I was doing all of the work since 2013. So like 6 years before things started really taking exponential growth. But I had enough that it made me continue to the process. By 2015, when I left my full-time job, the inflection point that I saw, my wife and I listened to this other podcast. This guy was in Atlanta area, and he was a serial entrepreneur. But one of the things he said that he and his wife did, they had a plan or an agreement that if he was able to bring home X amount of dollars per month consistently for 3 months, that validate his business, and he was able to continue to do it, and so forth. And they had commitment with their kids to pick up the kids from school and things of that nature. So this guy, I took that model and I approached my wife with it and said, all right, at that point we were renting a 1-1, and we said, all right, if I can bring home, I think it was like, at that point, rent was like $1,100. If I could bring home $1,100 consistently every month, and I take care of rent, which was the biggest expense, does that make sense for us to jump ship? And she had a job as well, and so we're like, all right. I was in sales, so I was doing my full-time gig, and we had debt paid down and making commission, so life was good. So we were like, all right, this would be a best of a chance to experiment. But the inflection point came when I started getting that first inflection is when I started getting that consistent money every month. And that made me saw that there was validation behind it, that the podcast was bringing the customers, and that the customers were converting, so I can at least pay that much per month, at least. So hopefully that makes sense, that inflection point. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. No, that's thank you for the insight. I think it's inspiring for the audience to hear and get like to the realness behind it.
Yeah.
Looking at how you help other companies, maybe to kick it off, my first question would be, what is one underrated lead gen tactic that you believe more salespeople should be using?
For this individual sales rep, this is gonna be biased, but I'll say it. I think it's creating content. Now it's not so much because you should, as a sales rep, you should be doing your cold outreach, and we teach that, to the moon and back. You should be using LinkedIn to engage with your ideal customers, or building your list through LinkedIn, and then getting your list enriched through tools like Full Enrich, and building your sequences through tools like getting data through tools as well, like Apollo, or like there are many different out there. Zoom Info, you can use those as well. But the key that I found, and then you should be sending emails and doing phone calls. But the key is creating content, and you as the individual rep being that source of knowledge in your industry, so people can come to you. I saw a quote and I sent it to a friend, and I want to share, see if I can find it real quick to share it. It was on Friday. I sent it to it, but it just made so much sense that when I saw this, and I was like, man, this is what salespeople should be looking at. But essentially, it was around you as the rep creating content, and it is, here it is. The quote says, "Your career is no longer about being the best." So this should answer that question. Your career is no longer about being the best. It's about being the best known. If the world doesn't know you exist, you won't get the best opportunities.
So true.
Like, think about that. Like, so as a sales rep, we're in an era where we have, Gary Vee talked about it like years ago. Like, everyone should be every company should be on content making machine. And for us as individual reps, yeah, that's what we should be doing. And that's going to be one of your number one lead generation source. Not that your sales source, you should be doing your cold outreach. But if I were to go back in a full-time sales rep position, if I'm selling carbon neutrality services, you best believe I'm going to know everything I can about it. Not everything out there, but I'm going to know as much as I can. Information, I just need to know 10% more than my ideal customer. That's what Amy Porterfield teaches. And then I'm going to share content on that. That's going to be in the form of short form videos, or I'm going to share in the form of, answer the most common questions I get on cold calls or when I interact with customers, turn those into content pieces. And I might post once a week on LinkedIn. I'm just trying to be known within my sphere of influence. As this quote says, be the best known in your industry. Even if there are other people out there who know a lot more about carbon neutrality than I do, I'm going to be the best known. And content, the internet, that we have that at our fingertips, that enables any individual like me to be able to do so. And that's literally what happened with our podcast that allows me to create two businesses. A sales rep doesn't have to create podcasts, but they need to create content. And that's what makes that's what I would say is that a sales rep needs to be doing these days.
Interesting. So establish thought leadership and establish reach. So when people get to you, they identify you with that specific topic that you're selling.
100%. And it even validates and brings a lot more credibility. I'll give you an example. I was on a call, and again, mine is skewed, but you get the principle. I was on a call with a consulting client. They're hiring a new sales, some new sales reps. We got on the panel interview that I'm helping them out with. So everyone's going around introducing themselves, talking about their, what their role is with the company. And there's two other individuals. One of them was two VPs, and then myself as a consultant. So I came to me and I introduced myself. I said, I'm Donald. I'm an outside consultant, a sales consultant working with the organization, blah, blah, blah. Dude then replied back and said, hey, do you have a podcast? This is the candidate. And I was like, yeah, I do. And he was like, I listen to your podcast. So this individual that doesn't know me at all, didn't plan anything, just showed up on a panel interview, and I'm known in the industry and known by him. That brought a whole bunch of level of credibility. It also helps solidify to the client that I'm credible even more so. So that, because I create content and I'm one of the best knowns in my industry, it then allows for me to be able to validate and get new opportunities. Though that wasn't a sale, it did validate the investment the company was making with me. Does that make sense there? So sure. As an individual rep, because I am even if it's not necessarily because I create content, I get net new leads. Because I create content, when I do call and speak to the VP of marketing selling a CRM, they will see that, oh, this is the CRM, whatever my moniker may be, the CRM dojo. and they're like, okay, yeah, I see your stuff on LinkedIn. What's up? But just be and the way I teach it to our clients when it comes to the production side is be a big fish in a small pond. and all of us have niches that we can be that big fish in that small pond. Am I known in the world in the big pond, so to speak? They probably don't. Most people probably don't know Donald or the sales evangelist that we're out, but I don't care for that. I just really care for being in the pond that I'm in to be known, be one of the best knowns.
Right, right. So
Yeah.
there you have it. So okay, look, our sales team has done its homework, listened to your recommendations, Donald. They have reach. People come to them. You know, there's a lead every minute in the pipeline. How do you recommend our sales team to qualify them effectively? Because not every lead is the same, you know.
Not every lead's created equal. You and I have both seen that in many different instances. So, the thing that I would go back on that I tried to teach sales reps, and it's the sales organization must define what good looks like first. And what I mean by this, sometimes I found that sales reps have it on their end where they're the ones trying to figure out, is this a good person for us or not? But let's say the organization has already established that. This is what a great ICP tier 1 customer looks like, a good tier 2 and a good tier 3 customers. Great. We know what they are now, and I can reach out. When it comes towards qualifying that person, the thing that I always express is that it doesn't matter what method you use. Some people may be totally into the world of BANT, and if that's the case of your qualification, then great. Use it as long as it's being consistent. Some people may say, I'm a challenger approach. Don't matter. Keep doing that. And some may say, you know what? I use Medic, and that's fine. I don't really care what process you use. The key there, though, is that you need to identify. No one is going to make a move unless they have a issue or recognize that there is an issue. So what I always recommend is that the salesperson need to be more of an educator. And what that would mean is that they share enough knowledge and information that the person they're speaking to is educated enough that they recognize the challenge. My definition of sales that I've learned is that our job as a salesperson is not to convince the person to make a purchase or investment. Our job is to help educate the person enough that they convince themselves that this is a worthwhile endeavor. And what that would look like is me meeting with a prospect, me asking effective questions, not talking most of the time, but talking 30 to 40% of the time, allowing the prospect to talk 60 to 70% of the time, and to educate them by asking those questions. And when I do speak, that they start to think and they start to make a decision for themselves that this is an investment they would like to make. Jeffrey Gitomer always said people love to buy, but they hate to be sold. When you educate the person enough, they feel confident that they're buying and that you're not selling them. And that makes a huge difference in the process, in the sales process. So the how to qualifying those leads is being systematic. One, you have that disco or that discovery call. For the prospect, they're not calling it discovery, they're calling it research. So we want to make sure that they're prepared. Two, before that call, I want to provide them intel or information. Give them some notes, like with an agenda. We look forward to meeting. Here's what we're going to cover. Is there anything that you want to make sure that we cover that in that time period? They might tell you. You put it in the agenda. Now we know they want to learn about our software, our CRM. They want to see how it used, how it can help a small business like them, and they are doing. They're going to, they want to. We want to learn about their organization and how they're planning to use a CRM inside of their business. But now at least we both are on the same page that we know what they're looking for and what we're trying to do, and then there's a clear next step. Again, in there you can use your Medic, you can use Neat, you can use Band, whatever it is, but you're getting that information. What is the problem that they're facing, and then how they're going about making what they're willing to do to make that change. And if I can educate them in that process, asking effective questions, I gather information, they gather info. At the end, we make a established next step. Life is good. And I've trained multiple teams, whether it's on a band, and I've trained them on Medic, and I've trained them on their own proprietary process. But the key is, if you're not good at identifying the challenge in that discovery call, doesn't matter what you do, you're toast, because no one's going to make a move unless they recognize they have a problem.
So true. You've thrown a few acronyms at our
Sorry.
audience, and a few processes. There's like BANT and MEDIC, and do you mind like just
Yeah.
defining them just quickly for the ones who might not know?
Yeah, so let's go with Bant. It's easy.
Yeah.
So they're like if you most people when they meet with a prospect, they want to get certain information, right? So Bant consists of budget, and you don't need to do them in this order: authority, need, and then timing. So budget, authority, need, and needs and timing. What I typically use is I joke with my team and some of our clients. I call it N tab because the way I like to look at it, I look to find their needs first. Then I like to go into the time frame. Now, if we when I use a Banth methodology, if it's your what's the you know what's the why we're meeting in the first place? What's that issue? What's the time frame? How soon you want to fix this problem? And then we go into authority, how they make the purchase, and then the the authority, how they or excuse me, how they make the decision authority, and then budget, how they pay for it or how they're going to pay for it. So the BANT is the first letter of each of those words to make that acronym. But I moved that around to create N tab.
That's great. Yeah.
So there's another one out there that's called Medic, and there's like another Medic version, advanced one. But simply put, it's another qualification. So you're looking at like the metrics. I want to make sure I give you the exact terms. I have it down here on my computer. The metrics, the economic buyer, the decision criteria, decision process, then identifying the pain, and then obviously the challenge. Excuse me, the champion. There's idea is the medic approach is that you have a champion, and every deal you should have a champion, but it's critical to identify that person up front so they can help play quarterback, or point, or that that lead, so to speak, in the process. So that's the medic approach, and I like that one because it's not just like the simplicity of like a budget, authority, need, timing. The champion, discovering that champion and helping that person to lead it, you don't leave that to assumption. The metrics, like when you can start quantifying issues, then it's great. Then obviously, sometimes sales reps don't even recognize how somebody's going to judge the criteria of this. Like, what are they going to look at for the if this is going to be effective or not. So some of those things are just really helpful, and it's another approach. Now, does some of those occur in the process when you do BANT? Of course, but that's why I tell at the beginning. I said it doesn't matter what process you use. The Challenger. There's a book called The Challenger Sale, and it's a great read. And one of the things that the authors did with this one, they found out that sales reps, there are different types of sellers who are the lone wolf. They like to work by themselves, and they do pretty decent. You have the sales rep who are the relationship builders. They love to network and build relationship and talk and so forth. And you have some sales reps that are challengers, and that challenger seller is what they like, that approach I was telling you about. They talk less, but they challenge the buyer's perception. The buyer might say, I want a CRM. Before we go and give you the CRM, the sales rep is like, why would you need a CRM right now? We are currently using an Excel doc. So you're challenging their assumption. Well, what's the Excel trying to do that you can't do with a CRM? And now they're again, a buyer is helping to validate himself, or it's not being a jerk. And I think that's where, when it first came out, some people had they were already cocky as salespeople, and now they felt that they had a green card or this pass to be a jerk, and with the prospect. Well, but it's challenging their assumption, challenging what the status quo is, and helping them to make an informed decision. But anyways, so those are some of those methods that just explain.
Thank you, thank you. That's
Yeah.
super important to dive deep into them. But I'm also super curious, and when you think about a well-structured sales funnel, right? What do you think, Donald? What are some critical components that every sales funnel should have, or every sales team should have in place for a sales funnel?
Oh, all right. This one is so if you're a marketing leader listening to this, there's two side to it. We won't go into the lead generation side of that funnel, and just to clarify, more so like the sales funnel, the sales process, basically the path in which a lead come from a lead to a closed net new business. Is that
Yep.
okay?
Yes. Yep.
Cool. So love it. So as a consultant, when I work with organization, I start off with a bare bones process, and then we usually add to it or may take away from it, depending on the complexity of what they're doing. But the first step typically is an initial outreach. The sales rep is doing initial outreach to their focus list. Then they have that initial conversation. That's where they probably have booked a meeting. They're meeting with the prospect. It may be an initial conversation may not necessarily be your discovery call, but it's me calling you, and I get you for 5 minutes, and you say, "Yeah, Donald, based on what you share, I'm interested. Let's set an appointment. I can't meet right now." Perfect. That initial conversation helped to set up the rest for the next meeting, and that next meeting is that discovery call. At a discovery call, I usually would like to have you bring some of your team members, and if it's necessary, I may bring someone, but usually it's them bringing the prospect, bringing somebody else with that part of the process. Once we've had that discovery call slash, typically you probably could do a demo. Depending on the complexity of your solution, it may be advantageous to create a customized demo. So then we do a demonstration phase at this point, or more people may come into. We do an initial demo during that discovery call, show you the stuff, and then now we do a deeper demonstration where more people are coming in. We're going deeper into the process. Once we've done that, it's going to proposal phase. And in that proposal phase, the team and I create a proposal, and we demonstrate that to the prospect, and we call that a proposal review. So that's a little bit right after that. You can probably do in between. Some companies, the way I do it right now, after we do quote unquote a demo, we have our team create the proposal, and then we set up a proposal review. And at the proposal review, that's when I have the proposal. I don't send a proposal before, oftentimes, because I want the prospect to be able to go through with me through all the details of the proposal, so they can truly understand. Once we've done that proposal review, there may be some negotiation or things that they want to change or whatnot. We do that. And then finally, we call it conversion, where that prospect is converted, or close one, where the deal is closed. You may do some negotiation in a proposal review or between that and the close, but that's a bare bones process. And then afterwards is where customer success comes in and takes care of the prospect and carries and gets them onboarding and so forth. But that's that funnel, that sales funnel that we might follow as a fundamental.
Thank you. Yeah, that's extremely helpful. So look, you've trained so many sales professionals. I'm really curious, if there is one, what's the common challenge they face, and how do you help them overcoming? Okay, prospecting, yeah, just out of the bat.
It's like the most challenge that most salespeople, they'll tell you, I know how to sell if I can get in front of a prospect, and I'll tell you the next thing. I'll tell you the next issue. But the biggest one is like they don't have enough business at the top of the funnel. That's why even with our show, like with our podcast, most of our content pieces is around business development. And if you look at my LinkedIn, my profile, you'll see helping new sellers convert pipe. 3 to 5x their sales pipeline, because that's that phase that most salespeople have the biggest challenge and struggle with. So if we can help them with that, we know we can help them with the rest. But that's kind of like the nectar, if I was a plant, so to speak, to attract them, because they're going to come and they're going to want to get that, and then we can get them to stick around, and we can help them out with like their discovery, which is typically the number two problem. Because most people will say my problem is closing. I don't feel the problem is closing oftentimes, even when somebody tells me. This is where I challenge them. What I find is that they're waiting till the closing phase and you notice that when I said it, we call it a conversion, but they're waiting to the close to be able to quote unquote close the person. Like, conversion is a process. and the close or conversion starts during the discovery. That is where the deal closes. And if you do a poor job with discovery, it's going to be more challenging for you to be able to close at the end. The way I look at my process is like, if you imagine a cone going towards this side, the not so much on the people at the in the process, but like at this early on in the in my outreach, my pipeline is bigger, and then it tapers down for sure. But the complexity should be easier. Or if you look at it as a level of if it's going easier, just imagine that cone going this way, where at the front is the prospects coming in, and it gets easier towards the end, because that by that part, by the time I get to the negotiation, it shouldn't be much that I'm doing. By the time I get to the proposal review, it shouldn't be much of an issue. By the time I get to the conversion phase, there shouldn't be a lot of convincing. Those deals should only be in there in a short period of time, because most of the work is up here at the initial conversation, getting the right people, and then the discovery phase, like really going deep on that, getting the right people on board, getting the right reasons and so forth, validating that, and then everything else becomes easier afterwards. So first problem is prospecting. Second problem is quote unquote closing. Really is a discovery problem. They don't find the right reasons. They don't have the right people. And there's nothing enough compelling for the person to make a move or an investment. Status quo wins.
So you've been in this business for quite a while now, and you've built insights. I'm curious to look into the future, right? So I feel like the whole sales and specifically around lead gen, the whole space has evolved quickly over the last years. How do you see it going forward in the next few years when you think about lead gen strategies, sales strategies?
Yeah, I think it's getting harder and harder for sales teams to be able to for sales reps to be able to break through the noise. I think we're going to a renaissance era. We're going back to a former year of selling in where the buyers are, and we need to go and catch up with them. The buyers want us to know them before and to have some kind of connection with them. They're not responding to our emails as much. They're not responding to our random cold DMs from LinkedIn as much, because we have abused the process and now most people they know what's going to happen. So that part of the whole deal is I feel is evolving. What I see happening in the future, again, so the relational approach, introductions, going back to the way we saw things in yesteryears. I also feel like being creative is going to be even more of a demand for prospects, and I think you're going to see an increase though in the places and the means that don't work. I think some sales components are going to leave sales reps and go into maybe marketing. And also could be even outside firms. So I was one of our partners. They were talking about that we collaborate with. They were sharing a concept of using agencies for the email outreach and giving sales reps a break from sending outreach. Google has totally adjusted their process, right, when it comes to email. So you find that you can't do a high volume outreach play anymore unless you have multiple email accounts and that you're sending out hundreds and even thousands. And that's where the AI part comes in, where it can do some of that. And yeah, you can create the content piece, but it's mass emailing at scale, and there's going to be agencies that do that because again, the gone are the days where I send out 10 emails and I get a one appointment. You're probably looking at that, 50, 20, 30 emails before I can get through and then get the appointment. So does it make sense for the sales rep to keep doing that or to farm that out? But then the sales rep can do the more focused approach doing the most focused outreach, reaching out to a set list of companies, and almost being like account managers per se, but they're prospecting those accounts and trying to multi-thread and trying to grab their attention and trying to book appointments. But those deals that are most valuable for the sales rep to focus on, I'm not going to have them focus on a deal less than, again, $1,000 a month MRR. Maybe I'm going to have them focus on things that are 5,000 MRR per month, and that's going to be a little bit more detailed work for them rather than the $1,000. But that's where I see, and that's what I would come back to.
Interesting. I mean, you mentioned it a bit, and I definitely wanted to touch upon it. AI, right? It's the hype cycle that we're living through, and it's touching upon a lot of topics related to sales, and maybe at every step of the process there is a sort of part that AI will touch. How do you think about that? Are you excited about it? What are the downsides? How do you think AI will impact?
I think there's a positive and a negative. I did a poll, and I'm going to pull it up here on LinkedIn, where I asked a question around AI, and the poll simply said, "How often are you using AI?" Let me see if I can show you quick to give the stats that people are replying back to right now. It was 4 questions, 4 options, right, with the LinkedIn poll. 1, are you using AI? 1, how often are you using AI? Never. You're doing it like daily. You're doing it weekly. Or whatnot. How often are you using generative AI? Daily, multiple times per day, never, a couple of times monthly. 74 votes so far, so it's brand new, and I still have a week left. But 50% says daily, 26% says multiple times per day, 5% says never, and then 19% says a couple of times per month. So of that, only 5%, so 95% are using generative AI.
And these are SDRs?
This is a variety of individuals. So we have sales reps, we have sales leaders. So seniors. So with senior levels, we have organizations with showing all of my stats so far. So company size, account executives is the most. Then we have founders, then we have CEOs, and then we have sales development reps, and we have sales managers. So all of them are mostly in the sales, but the majority are account executive. But from that approach, from what we're getting, it's interesting to see from those 74 that they are all 95% are using generative AI at some part, and about 50% are doing it daily, and 26% are using it multiple times per day with it. So we'll go back to your question now. Where do I see it? I see it absolutely taking over so many more activities. This is then a challenge and an opportunity. So here's the challenge. When we do so much with AI, it then pulls the sales rep out of that process and then allows for more spam or garbage to be sent. When I told you about using agencies, right, to do an approach, AI can help us to be able to send out a lot of emails, but the content that you're sending shouldn't necessarily be AI generated alone, because then you're just sending out garbage. Like, where do I need the sales rep? I'm just pushing a button. Like, we can program that, a macro to do that, so that can happen. We don't need you. We can have monkeys to do that component at that point. So then we can just fire all the BDRs, right? Salesforce now has Agentforce, where they have one step further, where they have they can have AI do phone calls, do phone outreach, and they can do some emails as well. So that's impacting. But the problem that we find, though, is go back to what I said about the Renaissance. Since the pandemic, we are all about taking advantage of technology, and so the challenge there is, again, we can send out a whole bunch of garbage, we can send out a whole bunch of information, but the opportunity lies, and I spoke about this last week, that the sales rep that are able to make a human-to-human connection are going to be way more successful, because the buyers don't want that they haven't caught up to the part where they just want to deal with AI. The moment they do that, maybe the next generation of the Gen Xers, not Gen Xers, where are we at? Gen Alphas,
General.
maybe they are going to be so accustomed to dealing with AI that they won't necessarily care. But right now, the millennials that are in leadership, folks like you and me, or the Gen Xers right before us, and those ones, they like to be able to have that human to human connection. And even we see this with the Gen Zs right after us, right after the millennial. They are still open to it, but I find that they still like to have, they can communicate a little bit more with stuff, but they still have that relational part. But the leadership now, millennials and Gen Xers, I feel that those generations, those leaders want to have the engagement and not just have that process automated. So I feel we have a time before that can happen, over the next 5, 6, 7 years. But if we just go all automated right now, we're going to find that some sales reps are going to be happy, and then a lot of them are going to be out of jobs, and the ones who are able to do it properly, to actually make the connections, are going to be way more successful in that. Hopefully that makes sense. But I feel there's ways though we can utilize AI, and I use AI multiple times per day. I literally had to replace my browser with a generative AI. So instead of the Google search, it was going to generative AI. I didn't like all of that approach. I used it for like 2 months, but now I just have my regular Google. But when you do search on Google, it's using that AI summary where I'm not even scrolling down the page anymore to find stuff. I'm looking at the answers that Google is recommending from the top. Because it's using its AI summary for me. So I like to do research with AI. I like to make AI do the things that would cost me a lot of time. But when it comes to the human to human interaction sales part, this is where we differ. And maybe the tech will get improved over the years, where I can have a really, really dope avatar that really understands me and know everything about me and can, have a conversation for me. That part would be super scary at that point, and beneficial. But I think we're not to that point yet. But I don't see it being too far away in history.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. So you heard it, folks. Keep it human. We're humans selling to humans,
Yes.
at least for now. So before we go, Donald, if you have any piece of advice that you would give to startups, small sales teams just starting up, looking to build and scale their lead gen efforts successfully, what advice would you give them?
Variety of stuff. I would do a variety of approaches. It's very easy and tempted to say, I'm just going to go this one path, and this is the only thing that I'm going to do. But I would say invest in multiple different sources. So you're doing the cold outreach. You may be taking advantage of LinkedIn, but create content as well. And I think some paid ads. Ads are been very lucrative. And I think depending on the sources that you're looking at, influencer marketing is also beneficial depending on the industry. So I think there's a variety of stuff that you can take advantage of, but you just don't be afraid of trying them and experiment. I tried with podcasting, and that was my niche, and that's a place that I camped out and built 2 businesses from it. But don't be afraid of trying new stuff and do a variety of approaches. So
There you have it. Donald, thanks a lot for all the knowledge nuggets and the insights that you gave us. It was great having you on the pod. And will share a link in the show notes to you, and so people can find you. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me.
Take care. Perfect.